Dan Woike covers the Lakers for the LA Times, and LeBron put on a clinic last night. He is joining us now live. So let's start with J.J. Redick. It seemed pretty obvious in the first game or two that he was identifying Anthony Davis as the best player, a lot of usage. Is anything, if I said to you, give me two things you've noticed with J.J. Redick you didn't see with Darvin Ham, what's his identity as a coach right now, Dan?
I mean, I think he's been able to get really good buy-in from his players when it comes to executing the offensive schemes that they want and getting them away from sort of the hero ball, iso ball stuff that, by the way, LeBron and Anthony Davis are both excellent at. The way they're playing right now is more connected offensively. More guys are eating, as they say. And I think like the biggest thing, Colin, obviously, is that they get easy baskets. They create, 6 to 8 points a game on just sort of like layups that they draw up and stuff like that. And I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen, and beyond that, I just think like with any new boss, right, you have a little bit of a built-in head start when you get a job. And the fact that they've had success, particularly on the offensive side of the ball so far this season, I think it's only lengthened kind of the leash that J.J. Redick has as a first-time head coach.
What is it over the last 2 to 2.5 years? Anthony Davis had a reputation, and it was earned. He there were dad bod, doesn't really love training. I covered a player like that, Rasheed Wallace, who just didn't, he was allergic to the weight room. He didn't like it. Great player, great guy.
Yeah.
Last couple of years, this dude is amazing. I thought he was the best defensive player in the league last year, regardless of not winning. What is it, though? Like, he's just more durable. Has his game shifted?
I think him and I have talked about this some. I mean, he would tell you that some of the stuff that's happened, since he's been in LA that kind of earned him like the street clothes nickname was just bad luck, right? Like you step on Rudy Gobert's foot. Whose fault is that? That's not about being lazy. I think he's owned the fact that coming out of the bubble, he wasn't in good shape because he wasn't. I think that the short layoff really affected him. And he didn't get off to a great start and had a couple injuries that year. But like since then, the stuff that has kept him out of action has mostly been pretty freakish stuff. I mean, he played last night. You saw like his eye was still pretty swollen. You could see the bloodshot around like the center of the eye from where he got poked by Jakob Poeltl on Sunday. But yeah, no, he's been out there and he's been really empowered in this offense. I think, Colin, when people talk about spacing and shooting, obviously you want to create 3-pointers and you want to get shots for your shooters. But what you're also trying to do is you're just trying to unclog the middle too for the players that play around the rim. And that's where Anthony Davis feasts. And I think, as you see there, as he hits the three, he's been more confident on the perimeter too. And this is the best offensive version I think I've seen of him since he's been in a Laker uniform, and, he's been the guy.
Okay, I heard a story yesterday. Bronny's not going to travel, G League, and my first take was he didn't want to fly commercial. That was my first take. I don't think there's...
Who does, Colin, to be totally clear? When it's available, when it's not available, I've tried the same with my bosses. They push back a little harder against me.
I get it.
Yeah.
I don't think Bronny's an NBA player. He's a 6'1" off guard. He's not a true point. I don't think it exists. And in the G League, if you're not averaging 18 points in the G League, you're probably not an NBA player. How is this? I mean, is J.J. Redick going to be forced to play him? I mean, what's real and what's not with the Bronny story?
So I think, so it's a couple things I think are happening here that make this all sort of complicated and have the Lakers proceeding in the way that they're proceeding. I think, one, like, I think you're right. Like, he has a tremendous amount of work and growth in front of him to get to usable NBA player on a night-to-night basis. Right. He's a 6'1" guard. Athletically, though, and physically, like, he's there. He does possess those traits. It's harnessing them and using them. The ball handling and the playmaking is a real problem. I went to his first G League game and, in the first half, played pretty well. Second half, turnovers were up. Fatigue was up, didn't shoot it well, struggled in the second half. Didn't look, though, like on the court, like he didn't belong by any stretch. Like he looked like he should be out there and getting as many G League reps as possible. So that is one pathway to development. And I think, when you hear that they're going to willingly choose to not let him play in some of these games, you have to ask yourself, it's a logical question. Like, are the Lakers doing right by Bronny James and by Bronny James's development?
Yeah.
I do think it is worth noting that there is some of this stuff that is, even regardless of Bronny James, is just holistic about how they operate with the G League. Like, they do think it is valuable organizationally for a player's development to not just spend all their time in the G League, to be around on trips and to do things like go to your hometown, to be around for things like the in-season tournament, different stuff like that. They do find value in that, particularly for rookie players, and they've done so in the past. I just think, though, when you watch him, you just see a player that needs more. Like, if you want to believe in him, and there's a lot of reasons to want to believe in him. He's a tremendous kid, for one, right? He's about the right stuff. He's a great worker, doesn't treat people poorly. All of these things that you would want. High character. If you want to believe in him, you know that he needs to be on the court.
Yeah.
And that's the rub on this, and that's the disconnect. But I will say, Colin, look, if this makes LeBron James happier, if it makes him more comfortable, if it helps energize him through an 82-game season that, quite frankly, as he turns 40 here in December, is like, it's a long year, there's probably value to the Lakers to have that happen too. So, they're going to take a little bit of a PR hit in the short term, I think, on this. But, he's on the roster. They like having him around. Players believe in him. The organization likes him. And, if there's other benefits, obviously, that exist by creating, occasional cool moments with, him and LeBron, like, so be it.
Finally, it's early. We're in November. But you sniff around the league. Is there a trade in the offing? There's the Karl Anthony Towns as the first move to get Giannis. I had said before the season, I've watched Milwaukee get really old, really fast. Now that Middleton's, chronically hurt, they can't defend the wing. You're not beating Boston. You're not going to beat New York, Boston, and OKCs. And if you can't defend the perimeter, Lakers, by the way, Warriors now are playing very good ball because they have so much depth and they're twitchy and they move. You got to defend the wing. The Giannis stuff, you buy it. You can talk yourself into him getting moved if this thing gets ugly.
Sure. I think, like, you can talk yourself into that, Colin, with virtually any player, right? Like, I do think that, Giannis is the type of player you build around, right? Not the type of player you send out to rebuild if you can avoid it, right? And, when we tell the story of the Milwaukee Bucks, you watch that team now and you're just like, who they could use is they could really use a Drew Holiday type.
Yeah.
Who they had, who they won a championship with. And obviously they wanted to get more offense in the half court, and they traded for Dame Lillard, and, Chris Middleton gets hurt and they get old real quick. Right. But the good news is that the Eastern Conference, though, Colin, is like, they're a good week away from being like totally right back in this.
Yeah.
That's really all it's going to take in the East right now to like start building. And, if they do get Middleton back, but their pathways for getting better are really tricky. I think when it comes to trades at this time of the season, like, seeds are being planted. Teams are trying to still figure out who they are or what they can become. And when buyers and sellers then become a little clearer, it's easier to know. Right now, if costs are really inflated, there are teams like the Lakers that are calling around on big men, right? But it's a real seller's market. There aren't that many, and there's a bunch of teams that are looking for it. So, there isn't a ton of movement on this right now because the prices are high for, relatively low returns. If Giannis does hit the market, he's one of those, like, you move hell and high water to get that guy. Obviously, he's had an MVP caliber season so far, 59 points last night, despite the fact that this team is really struggling. That's the biggest to me. If I was going to be nervous about the Bucks, is like, this guy is doing everything and they're not winning.
Yeah. Dan Woike, LA Times. Good seeing you, my man.
Yeah, it's good seeing you too, Colin. Let's do this again soon.
All right.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.